You've likely come across the word holy at some point, maybe in a song at church or in a conversation. For many, it's often linked with the idea of being a morally upright person. So when we say God is holy, we often mean that he is perfectly good and morally flawless. That's true, but in the Bible, the concept of holiness goes beyond just moral goodness. It's about how God is the ultimate creative force behind everything. He's the only being with the power to bring forth a universe filled with life and beauty. This makes God completely unique, which is the core meaning of holy. A great way to picture this is by comparing God's holiness to the sun. The sun is one of a kind in our solar system, incredibly powerful, and it's the source of all life on Earth. In a way, we could say the sun is holy. And just like the sun, everything around it, its atmosphere, can also be thought of as holy. Just like the sun, the closer you get, the more intense it becomes. That same power and goodness that brings life can also be dangerous. Think about it. Get too close to the sun and it will destroy you. In the same way, there's a paradox at the heart of God's holiness. If you're impure, his presence is dangerous, not because it's bad, but because it's so overwhelmingly good. We first encounter this paradox in the story of Moses and the burning bush. So, God tells Moses to remove his sandals because he's standing on holy ground. Moses, filled with fear, covers his face, and God warns him, "Don't come any closer." It's a powerful moment, showing the sheer intensity of God's holiness. This same intensity is explored further in the stories about Israel's temple, the central place where God's holy presence resided. At the heart of the temple was a room called the Most Holy Place, the very hotspot of God's presence. Whether you were an Israelite living near the temple or a priest working within it, being close to God's holiness was dangerous ground. So how does anyone approach God's holiness without being in danger? Well, in the Bible, the answer is that you need to become pure. Now you might think of moral purity, living a good and upright life. That's part of it, but the Bible also focuses on a different kind of purity, ritual purity. This type of purity means distancing yourself from anything associated with death, like touching things such as diseased skin, dead bodies, or even certain bodily fluids. These things make you ritually impure. It's not sinful to become ritually impure, but the issue arises when you try to enter God's presence in that state. That's why God gave the Israelites clear instructions on how to recognize when they were impure and how to become pure again, allowing them to safely enter the temple. So, that's what much of the book of Leviticus focuses on. But the idea of purity doesn't stop there. It keeps evolving. Later on in the Bible, there's this fascinating story involving the prophet Isaiah. He has an intense vision where he finds himself inside the temple, right in the presence of God. Naturally, he's terrified. He knows the rules. He shouldn't be there, and he's afraid he's going to be destroyed. Then something unexpected happens. A strange creature called a seraphim appears. It flies over to Isaiah with a burning coal, touches his lips, and says something shocking. Your guilt is taken away, and your sin is atoned for. So this burning coal somehow purifies Isaiah. It's an incredible moment because typically, if you touch something impure, that impurity transfers to you. But now, something new is happening. This coal, a holy and pure object, touches Isaiah and transfers its purity to him. Instead of being destroyed by God's holiness, Isaiah is transformed by it. This shift is huge, but there's another major development, this time from the prophet Ezekiel. He has a vision where he sees water trickling out of the temple. That water grows into a stream, which becomes a deep river flowing through the desert, bringing life and leaving a trail of green trees behind it. Eventually, it reaches the Dead Sea, making everything fresh and full of life. So, instead of people needing to become pure before entering the temple, here we see God's holiness flowing out of the temple, purifying and bringing life wherever it goes. But what does this all mean? Well, we don't fully understand until we meet Jesus. He claims to be fulfilling all these ancient prophecies, but in a completely unexpected way. Jesus goes around touching people considered impure, those with skin diseases, a woman with chronic bleeding, even the dead. Normally, their impurity should transfer to him, but instead, his purity flows into them, healing their bodies and restoring their lives. Jesus is like that holy coal in Isaiah's vision. He claimed to be the physical embodiment of God's holiness, And he even said that he and his followers were now the true temple of God. Through them, God's holy presence would spread into the world, bringing life, healing, and hope. This is why Jesus described his followers as having streams of living water flowing from within them. So, this is where we find ourselves in the story. But where is it all leading? The final pages of the Bible conclude with a powerful vision of God's holiness, given by a man named John. In his vision, we see a completely renewed world, the entire earth transformed into God's temple. Ezekiel's river flows out from God's presence, washing over all of creation, removing every trace of impurity, and restoring life to everything it touches.